Hello, everyone, and welcome. Such a pleasure having you all here in attendance today. My name is Vianney Lubis. I am the Vice President of the Alumni Society, and I'm thrilled to welcome everybody here to this edition of SocietyCast in partnership with Meta, whom I first want to formally thank for their longstanding partnership with the Alumni Society. In fact, they've been a partner since the inception of our organization, which truly showcases their continued commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you so very much for your ongoing support. And as you know, Meta is a leader in the tech industry. So we're very excited to hear from members of their team today about how to get noticed and promoted at work and much more, I'm sure. And here at the Alumni Society, our goal is always to create an inclusive space where our members can really foster meaningful connections with each other, with our partners, of course, and with the community at large. So I want to thank each and every one of you so very much for being with us today. I know you all have very busy schedules, so we're grateful that you've chosen to spend part of your afternoon with us. So with that, let's get started. A quick rundown of how our event is going to go first. We're going to have a chat with our speakers for just about 25 minutes. After the fireside chat, we will then break out into small networking groups that will be led by our speakers. So this will give you an opportunity to connect with them and ask any follow-up questions, but really it's more importantly an opportunity to connect with your fellow members. So with that, let's go ahead and introduce you to our speakers today. Moderating the conversation is Michelle Sanceau, Product Marketing Manager for North America Automotive at Meta. And participating in today's fireside chat, we have Carlos Garcia, Meta's Director of CPG, and Rocio, Wellington Consumer Product Marketing Lead, Remote Presence. Carlos, Rocio, Michelle, thank you so very much for joining us today. We're excited to kickstart this conversation. So Michelle, the floor is yours. Feel free to take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Vianney. Hi, everyone. I am Michelle Sanceau, as mentioned. I'm a product marketing manager at Meta, and I support our automotive business in North America. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. Very excited to get into this topic of getting noticed and promoted. I love this topic. I think many of us throughout our careers have sought advice on this topic. I think we've learned that many of us approach it differently. I think what I've learned is that there are standout behaviors among those that do it really well. And we're fortunate to have two of those people here today, as Vianney mentioned, Rocio Wellington and Carlos Garcia. So thank you both for being here and sharing your experiences. We're very excited to learn from both of you today. So before we dive in, I did want to get to know our panelist and let you know a little bit more about myself as well. So I will start. I live in Los Angeles with my husband and our two kids. I am first generation. My parents immigrated from Argentina in the 80s, and most of my family actually still lives there, so I hope to visit soon. I've been at Meta for about 7 years in a combination of both sales and product marketing, and I actually started as an intern in 2014 in Washington, D.C. So Rocio, we'll start with you for introductions, and then Carlos can go right after.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Rocio Wellington. I currently live in Menlo Park, about 5 minutes from our headquarters here in Menlo. I live in Menlo Park with my husband and my two kids, 7 and 4, but I grew up on the border in El Paso, Texas, and similar to Michelle, I'm first generation. My parents came from Mexico in the 80s, and I've been at Meta for coming up on 6 years, generally all within marketing, but I started in business marketing in my first role and moved to consumer marketing, and now I'm in product marketing, specifically leading remote presence.
All right, well, great to see everybody. Thank you for having us today. My name is Carlos Garcia, and I'll go in reverse order. I'll start with what I'm doing first at Meta, and then I'll tell you about a little bit about my family. But I've been here for 10 years. I just crossed the 10-year mark past May. I started on Mark Zuckerberg's 28th birthday in 2012. Just serendipitously, it happened to be his birthday. So I say now, a decade later, I'm the birthday gift that he never wanted, but he's still stuck with me 10 years later. I help lead our CPG, consumer packaged goods vertical over here at Meta, and I've been in a variety of sales roles since I joined. In terms of where I'm from, I currently live in Northwest Connecticut with my wife and daughter, and I grew up in New York. I am 100% New Yorican, Puerto Rican on both sides, and as many other New Yoricans, my Spanish is not very good. So if you ask me any questions later, please English, otherwise I may not be able to understand. But my father grew up in a little town called Juncos in Puerto Rico, and my mother grew up in a little town called Ceiba.
Amazing. Well, Carlos, you're doing something right because 10 years is definitely an accomplishment. So happy to have you both here. Okay, so let's dive right in. I wanted to start with a hypothetical situation, but one that I think many of us have experienced throughout our careers. So the scenario is that you've decided that it's time to begin searching for your next opportunity. What is the first thing that you do, or many things after that, but sort of what are the first few things that you do? And Rocio, how about we'll start with you?
Sure. There's a few things, but I think the first thing that I always think about is making sure that my resume is up to date, that my LinkedIn profile is up to date, and that I have my elevator pitch really, really refined. Whether this is for an internal move, which I've made 3 of them in my time here at Meta, or if you're looking externally, you're really going to want any hiring manager or recruiter to have an up-to-date and holistic view of your experience. And so having those materials up to date is really important. The elevator pitch, think of it as kind of like a condensed version of a cover letter, right? So how can you quickly and the first 2 minutes of talking with someone, when they ask you that question, like, tell me a little bit about yourself, you have it really nailed down and it's really impactful and tailored to whatever industry or company that you're really interested in, that you're speaking to. I have found that leveraging career services through my alma mater, through the schools that I've been to, is really helpful. Getting someone to take a look at your resume, your LinkedIn profile, giving you objective feedback on how you can make it more impactful, what are different experiences that you may want to highlight more or less, depending on the industry that you're looking for, is really important. If you don't have access to something like that, honestly, just sharing it with like a peer or a coworker, or maybe an old manager of yours, I found to be really, really helpful too, because one, they actually know you well, and they know maybe some of the strengths that you have that aren't quite showing up in your profile or in your resume in the way that they should. And so that is often really, really helpful as well. The second is identifying the industries and companies of interest and then contacts within. So I found that like a cold application rarely goes very many places. That it's hard, right? When you just kind of submit your resume blindly. So to the extent that you can look on LinkedIn, and even if they're removed connections, any connection is a good connection, right? And so certainly like the closer in, that's great, but maybe you have a contact who has a contact at the company, that's great. Because you can hopefully maybe connect with them, learn a little bit more about the company, what they might be looking for. Even they might be able to submit your application as a referral, which we know is super powerful in getting noticed.
Yeah, I love that. I think the elevator pitch is so important, and just kind of owning your brand and knowing what your unique value proposition is, I think goes a really long way. And I love that you mentioned setting up calls with people in the industry or company that you're interested in. So I think just putting a face to your name is really important. Like you mentioned, just sending a resume doesn't always, lead to something else. And you really have nothing to lose and everything to gain in those situations. So I love that. I wanted to stay on the topic of seeking out introduction. So Carlos, I'll pass this one to you. Are there any rules that you typically follow when it comes to networking? What's too much? What's authentic? How much needs to be put into relationship building? I feel like you've done this well, so would love your thoughts on this.
The first rule of networking is there are no rules to networking. No, I'm just kidding. I'd say the only hard rule that I follow, because I think networking is a very nuanced and personal thing, but the only hard rule I would follow and I would strongly advocate is just be yourself. All right, just be yourself, be who you are, show up authentic in whatever the format, whatever the conversation, whoever it is that you're meeting with, because at the end of the day, we're all humans and people don't like inauthentic relationships. They don't like when people are posturing or pretending to be something that they're not. So just be yourself and lean into whatever makes you unique and makes you special. I'd say that would be the only, I think, hard rule that I would always follow. Other than that, I think it depends situation to situation and person to person. Personally, I prefer situations that are more organic, where the networking doesn't feel forced. So those may be things like industry events. Industry events are great for this because generally what I find is at industry events, people's filters are dropped, meaning that they are often there because they want to meet people and find out about new opportunities or learn about new things. So the openness and the receptivity to taking meetings and having conversations, grabbing cups of coffee, so on and so forth, I find it to be much, much easier to do. And from a sales perspective, we often attend industry events for that very reason. I also think it's okay to be intentional about what you're doing. So there's this balance between doing something that's organic and intentional. And what I mean by that is try to put yourself in situations where it doesn't feel super forced, but also if there's a certain person that you really want to meet or get to, or a certain subset of types of people or industry or sector, be thoughtful about that. So you're putting yourselves in the position where those things can happen organically. And then the last one I'd say is when you do network with people, when you do talk to people, people naturally as human beings want to help. It's in our nature to want to help. Your job is to make it really easy for them, right? Ask them to do one little thing that will be easy for them to do, and that will help you. Rocio, you mentioned something like asking your colleagues to maybe submit a resume for you, right, at a company that you're interested in working for. Most people will say yes to that if you ask, and make it really easy for them. If you give them a whole long list of things to do and make it really complicated, then you're going to waste their time. But if you make it simple, you will play into that universal human truth of people wanting to help.
No, I love that. Similarly, I think recently I received some advice on this particular coworker who was on a large call with their coworkers and saw one person do something really, really well. So she was really interested in gaining that skill set. So one way that she kind of went about that was like reaching out to say, hey, I thought you handled this situation very well. This is an area that I'm looking to gain like a skill set. Would you be willing to kind of jump on a call and discuss? So I think that's another, I agree in terms of like making it really clear how that person can help you and giving them an example of when they did that particular skill, very well. So I love that.
And I
Carlos,
love how you built on that, adding in
yeah.
the flattery bit. Flattery goes a long way. People love that. People
Right.
love compliments. So kind of leading with something that you saw that you want to learn more about, I think is an awesome, really powerful opening.
Exactly. So Carlos, I actually want to stay with you on this next question as well. As you look back on your career, what are some lessons you wish you learned about the topic of promotion? Because sometimes this can be kind of an ambiguous topic, which is why we're talking about it today. But Carlos, let's start with you, and then actually Rocio, you can go after.
So I get asked this question a lot, all the time at work by people that are in my org, people that are directs. I've been hearing versions of this question for literally 10 years that I've been here. And the first thing I always say is, because people always ask, how do I get promoted? And I say, do your job really well, right? Like, let's start there. And like, once you're nailing that, like, then we can add more stuff to that. So just always just be really, really, really good at whatever you do and try to be differentiated in how you do it and make yourself unique and indispensable within your peer set to whatever degree possible. And then after that, I would say be assertive and not aggressive. And what I mean by that is I think it's okay to make it clear that you're interested in being promoted. And I think it's okay to suggest or even ask for promotions if it's merited and you are in fact doing really well at your job. But you want to be sensitive to not overstepping into the aggressive range, because if you push too hard on it, it can be counterproductive and can actually set you backwards. And I made this mistake myself very early in my career with my first job, where I was 6 months into the job right out of college, and I felt that I was making the same contributions as some of the people at the next level who had 5 or 6 years of experience. Whether or not that was true, I came in guns a-blazing to the VP of our group, and I'm like, I should be promoted because I'm a specialist right now, but I'm doing all the same stuff that your managers are doing. You need to promote me right now, which, made sense to me at the time, being 6 months into my career. But now in retrospect, I realize that's a kind of an awkward position to put the head of the group in, with somebody being that new into a role and then asking for that big of a leap without me really having proven myself over a long enough period of time. So just don't overstep. Another kind of last one I would say is just be visible with your work, right? Like you could be doing the best work in the world, but if the right people aren't seeing it at the right moments, it can just make it more difficult, right? So again, this is, you don't want to overstep here and be like a shameless self-promoter all the time, right? But you do want to find ways to do it elegantly and at the right moments where the right people will see it. So if there are promotion decisions or discussions going on and they're having those conversations, they'll have you in their head and they'll be like, oh, I remembered Carlos worked on XYZ project, or he was in XYZ meeting and was really good, or he helped my team with, whatever. Like if you could time it right and get the right people aware and exposed to your work, that will only help you.
Yeah,
Rocio, go ahead.
Yeah, building on that, I think a few points is one, for your particular company or wherever you are, is make sure that you deeply understand the promotion criteria, right? So Carlos mentioned this, do your job really well is clearly one of the promotion criterias, but there's probably going to be more than that. And some of them may or may not be within your control, but I think you'll be less frustrated if you really understand what that is. For example, doing it for an extended period of time. Well, what does that mean, right? Like how long is a long time? Like at here at Meta, we talk about promotions being lagging and not leading, right? So you're not going to get promoted if you're simply showing the potential to operate at the next level. You actually have to be operating at the next level consistently over a period of time, retroactively. And also there's around, at Meta, for example, there's promotion criteria around there needing to be scope in your role, right? There needs to be a business need for you to be promoted. And so some of those things aren't within your control. So yes, you need to do your job really, really well over an extended period of time, but you should also understand what some of the other criteria is going to be. So you have a handle on it in advance. The second tip is, there's promotion criteria. And then I think at every company, there's sort of unofficial politics around promotion. And I think it's really important for people to know what those are. I've never been at a company that doesn't have politics around promotion. Those politics just may differ. And so what's important is really identifying a senior mentor potentially who can give you kind of the real on promotions. So you have a better understanding of how those conversations go, who's in the room, what are the points that come up. And so that I think is really important to have someone or somebody's like people that you can kind of have those conversations and they can give you the skinny on how that goes at that particular company. The last one is around this point that Carlos made around being assertive versus being aggressive. One of the things that I think people that I've certainly made the mistake of, and I see people make the mistake of, is not being proactive enough about your own career development. It is very rare that you will just like magically get promoted without having made very intentional steps towards that, at least not at Meta, maybe at other places, but not here. And so there's a balance again between being assertive and being aggressive, but having a very open conversation with your manager about what you're hoping to do, what your career aspirations are, generally under what timeline you are thinking about that, because then that'll set up a really great and honest conversation between you and your manager on like, hey, what are the things that you need to show and demonstrate over a period of time, right? If there's some gaps. So instead of getting frustrated, I don't know, during a promotion cycle where you don't get promoted, you're actually having very active conversations leading up to that. And so you know kind of where you stand and you know what you're working on. And you're proactive so that you're getting the right feedback, that you're getting the right projects, so you're being able to demonstrate those skills that are going to be required for your promotion.
No, these were great. I loved it. Be visible, be very, gain clarity. I think those are really important. We have a few questions from the group. So wanted to just highlight some of those. I think these are very relevant to what we were just discussing. So I think this is from Isabel Mendoza. So her question is, how can somebody not be aggressive when we know that some groups of people can often be perceived as aggressive? So I'll leave it up to either one of you to answer that.
I'm happy to start just to dovetail because I think the question after is asking about personal examples as well. So I'll go back to that first example. When I was at my first job and I came in as, what may have been perceived at the time as this, 22, 23-year-old fiery Puerto Rican guy coming out guns a-blazing, asking for big promos. Rocio, something that you said really stuck out to me about understanding the rules of the game, if you will, right? And every game is going to be a little different, right? Because different companies have different process for how they handle and think about promotions. And you mentioned Meta a few times, and at Meta, it's very structured. We do it at a certain point in the year, twice a year, and there's a whole process, and it's very organized. Other places that I've worked, it's been more ad hoc, and it kind of happens at different points in time as merited. But understand the rules of the game, and I think a big mistake that I did that actually made me come off more aggressive rather than assertive was I didn't even know the game that I was playing. I just looked at it as like, I'm doing X, they're doing X, I should be there. But I have no idea 6 months in, when I made that ask to the VP, how that company went about thinking about promotions, how that company went about timing promotions, how I was going to be evaluated to other people at the same level, maybe asking for similar things. Like I didn't do my own due diligence, and I kind of came out just with something that was very superficial. So I think being really smart and doing your homework and understanding the environment that you're operating within will actually inherently make you more assertive.
Great, thank you. I think one thing that I'll add here that I've heard is, excuse me, assertiveness without sort of empathy or compassion can be viewed as aggressiveness. And so what I take from that is I think being assertive in terms of like what you want out of your career, what you want out of that the next promotion or next step, but also having empathy in the people that are going to help you get there. And I think really understanding how they can help you and being very clear, I think goes a really long way. But that's something that I'm glad you asked that question, Isabel, is it's something that I've asked myself as well and have recently tried to understand. And that's sort of what I've gained out of it. But I think, again, not assertiveness, assertiveness without compassion can be seen as aggression. So I think it's just kind of remembering that, I think has at least helped me. So hopefully it will help others. So I think we can, Carlos,
I was gonna say, I love
something?
that. I'm writing that one down, by the way, because I think it's so true. And we talk a lot about elegance with product design at Meta and making something elegant versus blunt. And I think the same thing applies to how you live your life. And it's just like, if you think about like a shop now ad, right, on our platform, right? Like we could put a big, huge, glaring red shop now button that takes over your whole screen. And it's like, buy this, buy this, buy this, and like send you 5 million of them over and over again. And like, yeah, it might work and some people might click on it, but it would be super annoying and it would be a yucky experience for the person on the receiving end. Whereas we try to build our products in a way that are more elegant, where you get to the same outcome, but it's in a process that feels good for the people using our products, for the people that are on our platforms. And I think the same is true with this exact conversation. And Michelle, to your point, if you approach it from a point of empathy and think about the shoes that the other person is in at that point in time, you're just going to show up a lot better in that conversation.
Exactly. So I think we're actually close to time. So I know there were other questions, but we are doing the breakout group. So Vianney, I'll pass it back to you to get us started with the networking session.